Where does this meh mound of mediocrity land? Let's rank this film on the Cageometer.
Okay, that leads us over to the most important question of the show. Vince, where does The Old Way 2023 rate on your Cageometer?
All right. I wanted to be really critical of this film. And then I stopped and I was like, okay, I'll wait until I learn more about it when Patrick breaks down all the quick facts and whatnot, which I'm glad I did. Because I just felt like the third act just rushed to get to the conclusion. No way. So I can't be as critical on them when they were shorted 4 days of filming, which forced them to have to pivot. And knowing that, I definitely appreciate what they got out of the ending, because it could have been even way fucking worse. They hadn't been able to just kind of figure something out and make it coherent, like a coherent ending. Aside from that, I mean, it's just kind of your, like you said, it's like you take 3 popular Western films and you cram them into one. And I don't think they executed very well on it. Talked a little bit about how I felt like they could have made Colton out to be more of a badass, but maybe the whole time he's not supposed to be. It's just what he tells himself to make himself.
I mean,
feel like
McAllister?
McAllister. Yeah, sorry, McAllister. Make McAllister feel like a badass. You know, like he has to hype himself up to try to extract his revenge, but at the end of the day, he's not, which is why he has to take the cowardice way out every single time. So I don't know. Maybe that's just something that got lost in translation. And
I think it fits. That's a step on you thing, but I think it fits the character because it's like he's obsessed. He's obsessed over his dad being killed, and he's obsessed with Colton. It's like he doesn't have his own identity. He's just sort of feels like he has to be a badass so he can revenge his daddy, but like he just has some issues there. So
I feel like we fleshed that out by talking about it. I don't think the film did a good job at presenting that. Yeah. That's how it's supposed to be. Like we talked about, he's a wet blanket of a character. He's a poor antagonist. He doesn't really do anything. But overall, I mean, it was a middle of the road movie. So I'll give it a 5 out of 10. It could have been a lot better. It could have been a lot worse. A lot worse.
Could have been Arsenal.
It could have been Arsenal. Could have been a lot worse.
Like this movie benefited from watching right after Arsenal.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Be a lot more forgiving.
I'll give it a 5 out of 10. I think it's a middle road. It was enjoyable. I thought it could have been a lot better, but at the end of the day, I didn't end up hating the film. I did not sit there and cringe every second I was watching this fucking thing. As far as Nick's performance, I'll give him the same 5 out of 10. I don't know if that's being a little too critical. I just kind of felt like there wasn't much added by him. Once again, I don't know how much that had to do with them compressing everything or doing any kind of changes to the script. But I also didn't feel like he did anything to really take me out of the film too much. You know, it's maybe I'm becoming immune to his Cageisms. But
I feel like the cagey moments were very, very sparse in this movie. Yeah. I had a hard time even finding enough to count. I feel like, this is, I mean, even going back to like Pig, this is the most stoic we've ever seen Cage in a film. Yeah. Which was by design.
Yeah. You know. He just kind of, I feel like, if I compare his performance from this to Pig, in Pig, I felt like he added and brought more depth to that character, to Robin in that film. Versus this one, I feel like I get where he was going for. I personally don't think he pulled it off. I think it just came out for me a little too flat. But it wasn't bad performance by any means. So like middle of the road performance. We've seen him do better. We've seen him do worse. Kind of the theme for my rating on this movie and his performance. So 5s across the board. 5s across the board for me.
Nigel, where does The Old Way rate on your Cageometer?
I feel largely the same. It was a really predictable movie. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. It was like the story is really it's you got the setup where they kill his wife and he's gonna go catch him. And then he catches them. And like, that's the movie. It doesn't really there's a little bit of that. There's that emotional story of him and his daughter and their development together. But the plot of the movie is basically, here's what's going to happen. It happens. The end. You know, it's like really formulaic. But I just feel like, you know, I was excited by the prospect of Nick Cage being in a Western. And in the year of our Lord 2023, if you make a Western, there's not a lot of them being made these days. If you make one, I feel like it should be a lot more exceptional than just this kind of cut and paste plot that they did. And like you said, they just took 3 different Westerns and shoved elements of all 3 of them into one. They did add that spin of, you know, the 2 main characters being on the spectrum, which you don't tend to see in historical dramas at all, but specifically in Westerns. So that was kind of an interesting take. I just don't think the movie was good enough to execute it, and that could be for a lot of reasons. The director, the budget, the studio cutting shooting time off, not giving it a chance to grow. I think in a better script with a better studio with a better production team, this could have been a much better movie. So I give it a 5 out of 10 as well. It's the same for the same reasoning. It's not bad. It's a decent Western if you want to just throw it on an afternoon and watch it. If you're curious about what Nick Cage would be like in a Western, it's a good vehicle for that. It's not, it's just middle of the road.
Yeah.
It's kind of my thoughts
not
on
memorable. Just kind of, I don't know.
I'd say watch it if you're curious about that, but there's no real reason to not watch it, but there's no real reason to go out of your way and watch it, I guess. And it's not like Arsenal where I can't recommend it to anybody. Yeah.
Stay away from
I
Arsenal.
can recommend this to people if they're curious about watching a Western with Nick Cage. It's all right.
Yeah.
You know, if it's on cable or something, or it's on Netflix, you know, and you got an afternoon free, throw it on.
It's nice and short. You know?
Yeah, that's another nice part about it. It did feel like that third act just sort of happened. Like it was like the second act was basically them talking over a campfire about their feelings. And they're also going to catch up with these guys. And then they're there. They're just at the town. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay, I guess we're in the third act now. And I did the same thing too when he was talking, when McAllister's talking to Brooke in the giving her the Mexican food, and they're having that chat. And I checked the timestamp, like, there's 12 minutes left in this movie. Like, really? This feels like we're at the beginning of setting up a third act, and we're going to have some kind of other stuff that happen. But no, I guess we're starting the third act and then it's over. So, but it makes sense now knowing what happened behind the scenes, and they had 4 days slashed off their production, and they couldn't film the third act that they wanted to actually film. So, again, we've said it before, props for giving a complete story with what they were given, especially during production, not being told they're not allowed to do what they wanted to do. So I think they did a good out of it. But yeah, as for Cage himself, I actually really liked him in this role. I'll be more generous than Vince and give him a 7 out of 10. My reasoning for it is I felt like he did bring something to the character. It felt like a performance that he liked giving. I don't know if it's because it was his first Western he got to do, or the character was interesting to him. It wasn't just a standard badass gunslinger guy. It was a gunslinger guy who's on the spectrum and doesn't have feelings, and trying to explore that a little bit more. I mean, you could say that maybe about a Clint Eastwood character from A Fistful of Dollars. He's a remorseless, I guess he's got a moral compass in that stuff, but you can say that about a lot of those, that archetype of a Western characters. They don't have feelings. They get the job done, and they're cold-blooded killers and stuff. But what if you really wanted to explore somebody who was realistically like that and didn't feel emotions and didn't have human connections and tried to settle down and have a life? So I think I really would have liked to see this character in a better movie. I think again, I'll keep saying that. I wish this movie had been better, but if Nick Cage as Colton Briggs had been in a much better written and directed and produced film, I think it would have been a much better, could have had a much better result from that.
Yeah.
But that's not to say his acting in this movie was bad. I think it elevated the movie because of it. It's just kind of a shame we didn't get to see the full potential of him being this character. So, yeah.
The premise is good, but execution.
Yeah. And I didn't think his accent was distracting. It was a pretty decent Southern accent compared to, stuff like Con Air that we've seen where it's like he's doing a bad Forrest Gump impression or something. It was, felt more natural, and he kind of felt like he embodied this character. It was an enjoyable performance from me.
He doesn't really have too much of an accent. He just has like little Westernisms here and there.
Western American accent.
Yeah. And if we go by Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, it's not really.
But it clearly wasn't just like Nick Cage's normal speaking voice. It was he changed up his cadence, giving the character some kind of unique flavor. So, and he was suitably, I felt, menacing and badass. Like a lot of the characters talked about how scary and menacing he was, and I felt like he had that kind of undercurrent to his character. It wasn't like McAllister, where everybody just said he's a bad guy, and you all kind of have to just believe it because they say it. It felt like the stare that he gives the fat guy in the store, and just the way he acts around his daughter, and the way that the marshal talks to him, and how he talks to the marshal. You kind of get that feeling of there's a lot more going on with this guy than what we're seeing, which fits the story as we're being told, and what we're seeing of this guy at this point in his life. So, I'll give him credit for that too.
On my Cageometer, I'll echo all the same stuff. I mean, it's just middle of the road. I do feel like the visuals really popped in this. The towns that they had, the landscapes are beautiful. I mean, it's a really gorgeously shot film. But it's just, I don't know, it's just so cookie cutter and mediocre in a lot of ways. It's just kind of like, we didn't really spend enough time with a lot of the characters to really get to know them. We didn't really develop, this bad guy is so like boring and just a wet blanket. Like we said. So I gave it a 5 as well. It's just like, it's okay. It's not great. There's nothing memorable about it. Maybe the Spectrum stuff is kind of memorable, but like you said, if it was executed better, it'd be better. I think other Westerns, they like kind of, imply that they're these remorseless killers, but then we find out that they've just been burying their emotions deep down. But in this, we really get the sense that these people are actually like sociopaths. They don't feel remorse. They don't feel, emotion. Though they do, you see the emotions come out, which might just be, actors with actual emotions trying to act like emotionless people. But like Cage, when he's staring that dude down in the Mercantile, like there's almost like tears in his eyes of hate. Like, I just want this fucker to die. But, I didn't hate the music as much as you guys. I felt like the music was pretty decent. Like I said, the visuals, the acting across the board, I feel like most of the characters were pretty well fleshed out. Down to even like the guys, just the random characters who show up in the house that are just sitting around the table. Oh, yeah. Even those guys seem to have something, a character to them. They seem fleshed out. I felt like Ruth is really probably the most important character in this entire movie to pull you in and make you understand why Briggs turned into the person that he turned into. And I thought they really did a great job with Carrie Knope, I think is her name. Nope. Something like that. Nope. And then the kid is pretty good. I feel like if she's not believable, nothing is, So having found that one perfect kid for this role must have been very hard. Like we said, it is over 500 kids they auditioned, and she was the last one. And that was probably they were like, "Oh, this kid's nailed it. Let's just stop the auditions right now." Direction, it's as good as it can be for what they had. Like I said, as an audience, we're not supposed to know all this shit that happens behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We know it because we dive into this stuff. So we're more forgiving because we know that stuff. But like, if you just watch the movie, I mean, like, there's 12 minutes to go in the movie and nothing has happened in the final act. Like, our big badass moment that we've been building up to for, 80 some odd minutes. It's like just so smashed together because they had no time to film it. And it makes sense from a production standpoint, but from a film watcher standpoint, it's like, God, they really rushed through that final battle.
Right.
That all happens off camera. like everybody that Cage kills is off camera.
Yeah. All that build up just for that.
Yeah.
It's disappointing.
The only person we get to see him shoot is Eustace in that final battle. He doesn't even get to kill the main bad guy. It's the kid who does it. So it's, I wish it would have been a little better for Cage's first Western, but maybe Butcher's Crossing will be better. I don't know. I hope that he does more of these because I do think that he fits that genre very well, especially now that he's older. I think he can do these types of characters that are more grizzled and have been through some shit. If we would have saw 90s Cage in a Western, I don't think it would have been.
No. Tons of explosions and him flying through the air with sparks and more sparks.
Good speed in a Western.
Oh man, John Woo doing a Western.
John Woo doing a Western. I need it now. I need that in my life.
Yeah, so 5 out of 10. I feel like it's okay, not great. For Cage, I gave him a 5. I don't know. I feel like he was missing some of the gravitas of like some of his other characters. He just, I get that he's like on the spectrum and he's kind of a emotionless robot, but at the same time, like, I don't know, he kind of disappears a little bit in this he's just kind of meh. He's there. I didn't get as much depth as Nigel did out of him. I felt like he seemed to enjoy being there, but also I feel like this was kind of a paycheck. Maybe it's harsh to give him a 5, but I just feel like he didn't really bring anything memorable to it. There were those couple of moments where he wasn't just the stoic robot. And maybe that's why I'm giving him a 5 is because he performed so well as a stoic robot that he felt genuinely stilted and boring. But I'll echo exactly what Nigel said of like, I really wish this movie would have been better. Because, seeing Cage in this performance, I think the premise was good of the on the spectrum people kind of as the lead characters in a Western. We've never seen that before. The director actually said that was the biggest thing that, that was the reason that he decided to do the movies because you've never seen this before. And I really feel like we haven't. We've never really explored this stuff. Autism in general wasn't even like considered a real thing until like 80 years ago or something like that. I feel like the first person who was ever diagnosed with autism is still alive, if I remember right. So we've never explored this, especially during the heyday of Westerns. They never talked about this kind of shit. And so I wish it would have been a little better. I hope that he continues to do more Westerns down the road.